Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today I'm going to be doing the rotational guide to Monk. Now, in 5.1, Monk underwent a very minor change that mainly impacts the opener. Now, as you can see from the opener that I'm doing something very weird to something that you would have seen in 5.0. So, in 5.1, Anatman got changed from a off GCD to a GCD. Now, what this means more conclusively is that using Anatman in the opener is now going to be even more tight and even more of a DPS loss than it used to be before. Now, even if under the best circumstances or even under the worst circumstances, Anatman is still going to be a very, very, very minor DPS gain. So technically, the Anatman opener is still better than what I'm doing on the dummy. Now, the reason why I chose to go for the perfect balance opener is because the Anatman opener now relies very heavily on having the ACT plugin for trigonometry so that you can see the server ticks. And there is also an Anatman opener where the monk is the one face pulling the boss to do like a face pull Anatman. So there's a lot of very janky stuff going on with Anatman at the moment. It's also a super minor gain, only like I think it's like 20 or 30 DPS in the opener difference. Which is why I'm going to be choosing to take the perfect balance opener, because this way it also aligns very nicely with some other stuff that I'm going to be showing off as well. So that's pretty much why I'm using the perfect balance opener. Anatman is technically a very slight DPS gain. The reason why it's a DPS gain is in the perfect balance opener you're using perfect balance to get your greased lightning stacks, whereas in the Anatman opener you're losing DPS while channeling Anatman. So if you don't have this trigonometry plugin, in other words, if you're on PS4, you don't have access to this either. But even if you're on PC and you don't use ACT or you don't use the trigonometry plugin and you don't see the server ticks, then Anatman basically becomes more and more of a DPS loss the more you use it just as a server tick happened and you miss that one. But then you do make up most of the DPS that you lost while channeling Anatman by using perfect balance in a DPS way, and you'll see me use perfect balance for DPS purposes as well later down the line. So that's kind of why the Anatman opener is still the best, because you use perfect balance to deal more damage and make up for the lost damage from channeling Anatman. But for the purposes of this video and for just being a general purpose video that everyone can use, I'm going to be using the perfect balance opener because everybody will be able to execute that. So with all of that being said, that's kind of like the opener out of the way, I guess you could say, and why I'm using the perfect balance one. Other than that, so Monk is a job that has two different burst windows. We have our Riddle of Fire together with Brotherhood. Brotherhood is also our raid buff. And we have our perfect balance. Now, Riddle of Fire is very simple. You just press it, you gain a damage buff, nothing else changes. Brotherhood, kind of the same. You press it, you gain a damage buff for yourself as well as for your party members. This only affects physical damage, so your casters and your healers will not benefit from Brotherhood. And on the other hand, all of your physical damage dealing jobs will also feed you chakras that you can then use on the Forbidden Chakra. When we look at perfect balance allows you to execute all of your GCDs without needing to be in the corresponding form. If you don't know how Monk functions, Monk doesn't have a very like the normal combos, I guess you could say, but Monk has 3 different stances, and every time they execute a GCD they go from one stance to the next and they have access to different skills in each stance. Now perfect balance allows you to use any GCD without needing to be in set stance, meaning that we can basically do a combo of our 2 strongest moves, that being Dragon Kick to give you the Leaden Fist buff, and then Boot Shine to use that Leaden Fist buff. So that's why perfect balance also gives us a little bit of a burst window. And then at 6 minutes, perfect balance, which is 2 minutes, aligns up again with your Riddle of Fire Brotherhood, which is 90 seconds. So in total, Monk has a 6-minute rotation. Now, of course, I'm not going to do the full 6 minutes again like I did with Dragoon, because otherwise the video will probably get a little bit too long, because there's also a lot of other stuff that I still want to talk about. Now, Monk is also a little bit special in the sense that it also brings a defensive buff to the party. Of course, every melee has access to Feint, but Monk also has access to Mantra, so that's another reason why you might want to bring a Monk. So, let's talk about the actual rotation then. So, since 5.0, Monk has been changed quite drastically in the sense that now it's mainly a GCD optimization job instead of an off GCD one. Tornado Kick is also something that we're barely going to be using. but that you could still use in certain scenarios when the boss would like fly away and you'd technically lose all your stacks, like in E1 Savage. That's a good point, for example. And there's some other fights as well where you could get away with it and then use Anatman to get all of your stacks back. But basically, Monk is very focused on just doing GCD optimization. Now, before, what you would do is you would basically cycle in between two combos like you kind of do on Dragoon. You would do Dragon Kick Twin Snakes, and then your third GCD was kind of up in the air whether or not you'd need to refresh Demolish or not. Your second combo would then be Bootshine True Strike, and then again the third GCD would be up to whether or not you needed to refresh Demolish. Now, because in 5.0 we now have Fists of Wind, which grants us a 4th Greased Lightning stack, making us a lot faster, meaning that we don't have to refresh Twin Snakes every other combo, but every third combo. This also means that we're going to be dropping Twin Snakes for 1 GCD, which is very important because it means that as soon as there is any disconnect in the fight where you have to like disengage from the boss for a split second, it's not worth doing this anymore. It also means that if you get, for example, your 5th chakra, so you can execute the Forbidden Chakra, or another off GCD damaging move, like for example Brotherhood and something else doesn't apply for this, but your Shoulder Tackle, Elixir Field, that kind of stuff, you don't want to use it during this 1 GCD where you're not buffed. It also means that you might want a little bit more skill speed depending on your latency to the server as well. I'm going to be showcasing stuff on a very low skill speed build because my monk doesn't have as much gear as my other classes do, but it's still enough in order to execute the rotation properly, even though it is incredibly tight. So kind of look at it like this: if there is any disconnect, use the like Twin Snakes, True Strikes, Twin Snakes, True Strike. But if you can have full uptime on the boss, then you want to do Twin Snakes, True Strike, Twin Snake to reapply it. Of course, if you're going to be doing it like this, you're going to be changing from flank and back quite a lot, because it's not going to be flank, flank, back, back, but it might be something like flank, back, flank, flank, back, flank, or something like that. I don't know. So you're going to be jumping around the boss a whole lot more than you normally would. So with all of that being said, let's take a look at how it actually flows, and I'll kind of talk about it as we go. So of course, for the opener we want to be using our Meditate to get our 5 chakra stacks. We're going to be starting in Fists of Fire, because as long as we don't have that 4th Greased Lightning stack, we're not making use of that like extra damage that Fist of Wind gives us anyways. Now, as I said, we're going to be using the Perfect Balance opener, which looks a bit like this. And then we're gonna do a naked Dragon Kick, because it's more potency than doing a naked Bootshine. And then of course, as you can see, we're going to be changing from flank and back a whole lot more than we normally would, because of how the reapplication of our Twin Snakes works now. You still want to alternate Dragon Kick and Bootshine, but you're not going to be alternating True Strike and Twin Snakes anymore. Because as you can see, we still have a lot of time on our Twin Snakes, so we're gonna move to the back again for that True Strike. And then just as we hit that Bootshine, our Twin Snakes is gonna drop, meaning that when we reapply our Twin Snakes, that is basically gonna be an unbuffed Twin Snakes. But the damage loss from using a unbuffed Twin Snakes is not as much as the extra gain that we can get from getting that that extra Leaden Fist in there, basically, which is the main reason why we do it. So it's basically still a DPS gain, otherwise we of course wouldn't be doing it. But it does mean that as soon as you drop a little bit of uptime, this is not going to be worth it anymore. Now here I'm going to hold on to my Shoulder Tackle, because our Riddle of Fire buff is about to come up, meaning that we want to use that Shoulder Tackle underneath our raid buffs. There we go. And then here we're not using any of GCDs. Well, I didn't get one procced anyways, but if one would have procced, you would have held that over there basically. Now here I am going to reapply my Twin Snakes early, and it is because our Perfect Balance window is coming up, and I do not want to lose our Twin Snakes buff during this Perfect Balance. So now we're going to alternate in between boot shines and dragon kicks again. We are going to reapply our what's it called again? Our demolish, because we don't want to drop that basically. Now I did make a little mistake there, because I basically did dragon kick twice, even though we did get the buff, but it's not too big of an issue. I basically should have, instead of done a second dragon kick, just done the boot shine instead. But yeah, that's pretty much Monk. So this is basically going to be the flow for the rest of the fight. You're going to be using Riddle of Fire as it comes up. This of course always comes together with Brotherhood. Right here we're going to hold off on using Elixir Field, because we want to get that Twin Snakes buff up first. And it kind of repeats itself like this, and then down the line, when we finally do get back to our like our 6-minute window, I guess you could say, that is where our stuff will all line up again to do like a second opener, I guess you could say. And that's pretty much Monk. It's relatively simple when it comes down to like how you should play it, but in practice, in an actual fight, it is quite hard, and I think it's probably one of the hardest melees to play in my opinion. When it comes to optimizing everything, of course, you also have stuff like your 6-sided star, this thing, which you can use for example, if there is some downtime, you have to disengage from a boss, you could use 6-sided star to just run away, keep all your greased lightning, you basically don't lose anything during this downtime, and then you can get back to the boss. But in general, I'm not a big fan of 6-sided star because it feels really weird. But yeah, that's pretty much Monk. It's a pretty fun job to play. I would definitely recommend people, if they want to play melee, to try this one out. Of course, if you do want to try this like double true strike per Twin Snakes, it does take some practice, it does take some getting used to, because it feels really weird if you've always been used to doing Dragon Kick Twin Snakes and then Boot Shine True Strike, that you now all of a sudden are doing 2 True Strikes per Twin Snakes instead of just the 1. But yeah, that's Monk. Hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one.